welcome to everyone joining episode 2 of the Must Know blockchain use cases. The focus of this webinar series is to talk about use cases for blockchain technology beyond kind of cryptocurrencies that everyone reads about in the news and the press. And so every few weeks we get some distinguished guests on to talk about some of the mainstream enterprise blockchain use cases. And today we're going to talk about self-sovereign identity and data privacy. And I'm pleased to have two distinguished speakers on today, Kyle Thomas and Qian. And maybe I can hand it over to each of them to do a brief self-introduction. Qian, do you want to go first?
Okay, no problem. Thanks, Tim. Good evening, everyone. I'm Qian from Thoughtworks, China. I'm now the tech principal in blockchain business unit with more than, I think that should be 4 years experience in blockchain area. I will provide the blockchain service to the biggest automotive company and the commercial bank, in China. So today I will I'm very appreciate joining this webinar to share my views on self-sovereign identity and data privacy. Thank you.
Great. Kyle, looks like it's morning in the US there. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm Kyle Thomas, founder, CEO of Provide. I started Provide in 2017 to blockchain-enabled organizations, and it sort of evolved into something that's a lot more value added or higher in the value chain than just like a blockchain as a service platform. It's more related to the synchronization of enterprises, and that has it turns out that has very, very sweeping implications to the global supply chain. And so yeah, I'm very pleased to be joining you.
Great. Well, great. It's great to have you, Kyle. So let's get into it. And one of our audience members was commenting right before we joined that when we talked about self-sovereign identity and data privacy, that we make sure we talk about it in really easy to understand terms. So Qian, I'm going to hand it to you first. Tell us what self-sovereign identity is in a non-technical way.
Okay, it should be quite hard to explain in non-technical way, but in short, I think the self-sovereign identity is the next generation of digital identity, which is quite different from those in custodian to big tech company like Facebook or Google or Tencent or Alibaba, something like that. So we can just make a close analogy with the wallet in the real world. You just put your ID card or driver license or keys in your own wallet. These things belong to you, not to any other third party. So the same concept here, self-sovereign identity brings your rights back. You are gonna totally control what, where, and how your personal data can be used, just like the way you take your properties from your house by unlocking the door with the keys, which is in your personal wallet. So no one can steal it. That is what I think the meaning of self-sovereign. Sovereignty and
Kyle?
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Kyle, Kyle, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really just represents a new paradigm in business models as well. Yeah, I agree with everything. I think that yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how new business models evolve around the concept of self-sovereign identity, because everything is so centralized right now. And on the other direction, like I know you mentioned Facebook. Yeah, so how does an individual regain or re-enter the digital world or the metaverse, if you will, with this, armed with their own data, and the incentive model is flipped on its head because of this.
So what, let's talk about some real world use cases for self-sovereign identity. Maybe Kyle, can you start there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the advertising space is a very interesting, or sort of a under the microscope when it comes to self-sovereign identity, at least, because when I say armed with your own data, and decisions, I guess it means, what data will I allow, Facebook to know about me so that so that it can actually serve ads to me in a different way. And so that's, or maybe I don't want to see ads at all. So yeah, I think that's a really interesting use case.
But what is, maybe diving into the technology a little bit, how does blockchain technology enable users to have control over their own data versus the world we live in today, where large technology companies have control over the data? How does blockchain intersect with that?
Well, it's highly transactional. If you think about, like, when you're served ads, you get every ad that you see is essentially a transaction that is many times, I would say almost every time, using data that you have relinquished, and so having control back, or not having so some of the ship has sailed on that because you've already relinquished that data. But because of the transactional nature of it, in a future state, I see the ability to even under zero knowledge, potentially really hold that data, hold the keys and the access to that data on a transactional basis.
In my opinion, I think the blockchain, is a in nature or decentralized technology. That means there are no the central company to control the operation of that blockchain network. This is the core concept here. If you want to use the self-sovereign identity, or we also call that decentralized identity. Actually, we must use the decentralized technology to support it. Yeah. And also,
so sorry, go ahead, Qian.
Yeah, I just want to share another use case in my experience. Yeah. So can I go first?
Yeah, actually, please.
Yeah. Actually, I have experienced a use case in the healthcare industry. Actually, this project is comes from the United States. Actually, the people of United States has denounced the privacy, security, and the reliability of medical practitioner credentials in the existing system. So many startup companies are exploring solutions just using SSI, what we call self-sovereign identity. Usually, the registry the registration of medical practitioners in the United States takes 2 to 6 months, actually. When they change their institution or working region, or even just to update their certificates, they must register again. It took so long for them, and they cannot work during that period. Meanwhile, the credential data is exposed to leakage in the registration process. Actually, I have some data to support my opinion. According to the data from our website, BeatGlass, in 2020, the healthcare industry data breaches in the United States increased by more than 55% from the previous year. Yeah, it's around 600 in total, which affected more than 26 million people. That's really painful. So with the SSI, the medical practitioners are able to apply and manage their credentials by themselves. Of course, with the support of, blockchain, they can do that. That is avoiding the risk of third-party leakage during the process, and also provide more convenience, in the decentralized digital way. But there's some scenario they needed to use then credentials. They could just combine multiple credentials for verification, and this can also reduce the risk to exposure as well. Yeah, there's another use case.
That's really interesting, and just to layer onto that, and it's sort of in a more abstract way, that also changes, self-sovereign identity changes the risk surface. It changes the attack surface for potentially bad actors, because now instead of the central organizations that were previously the targets, nation states to do very targeted attacks against these organizations, but now you'll have those targets sort of shifted to the individuals themselves, which is a much more dispersed and unclear surface area, but it also could present real physical danger to these people themselves, depending on what keys they're holding. So that's another sort of interesting angle to consider here.
Yes, yeah. Tim, you first. Sorry.
No, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just agree with Kyle, because if you just remove the risk from the central organization, actually you just add the workload to the user to defend the risks. Actually, this is quite correct. So we must to develop more technology to help the user to use then the public key, or then their personal data easily. This is what we want to do. Yeah.
And also split it apart so that they actually, there's other protocols that we need to consider, so that the access to the keys themselves doesn't exist, and that's they don't actually have the full, they can't just be demanded under the threat of violence. Give me your keys. And there's some interesting protocols that we need to consider there, I think, as well.
This relates to a question that we're getting from the audience around users' data being protected. If it's a public blockchain, is that more exposed? And when we think about this, should we recommend a private blockchain that's still somewhat centralized? And Qian, how do you think about the security trade-offs of those options?
Actually, when we talk about blockchain in enterprise area, we just use the custodian blockchain, or you can treat it as a private blockchain, but there's quite a little difference in between them. That's fun. In my opinion, if you want to keep your personal data in security, actually you can just store that data on in the public blockchain. That's quite correct. You can do that in that way. So actually, we have a lot of solution around the blockchain to help us to achieve our goal. That just keep the data in consistent way, but also store the data off chain. We use a lot of we develop a lot of technology like the off chain, side chain or other actually just there is a technology mentioned by Kyle, zero knowledge proof. There's also a kind of cryptographic method to keep the data in very security way on the blockchain. Yeah.
So I think it's sometimes confusing for people who are new to blockchain when they hear about some of the aspects of public chains. Anyone can join the network. There's some level of transparency. Can you explain a bit, Kyle, about why even on a public chain there are technologies that help keep sensitive data secure?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I think that the public chain is definitely the future. Having protocols that that help keep the data in a secure way off chain, but allow users to prove, and those that they want to have verify that data. I believe is certainly the future of many enterprise synchronization and B2C synchronization models. The cryptography behind it is basically like I have some bits that are off chain that I created through some measure. Maybe it's a profile photo, maybe it's some other data, maybe it's a stream of data about a procedure, a medical procedure, right? Whatever that may be. I don't want to put the raw data on chain, but I want to have a protocol that I can use to evaluate the data and generate a proof about that data, and I'll put maybe the proof on chain, and then I'll send you. Maybe I want you to be able to verify it, so I'll send you that data off chain, and I'll send you a temporary verifying key off chain, so you can reevaluate, so you can rerun the process that I ran off chain, also off chain, and then use the data that's anchored on chain, in this case the zero knowledge proof, to verify the validity of that data. And so because of that, and of course we can use like time-based access protocols, that sort of thing, to the verifying key. And that's kind of what we've been working on at Provide. But that the way that works is, it really, or what that enables is truly truly private interaction between parties. And I think it's highly secure and definitely the future, very much related to the self-sovereign identity that we're talking about.
So a lot of that we've gotten into some pretty abstract and in some cases theoretical concepts here, zero knowledge proofs and off chain and on versus on chain.
I don't think those are theoretical. I think they're in practice, but I know what you mean. We're talking about them theoretically, sure.
So let's get practical and start talking. I'd like to hear from both of you about how the average consumer who doesn't know what a zero knowledge proof is and doesn't know on chain versus off chain, will actually, how do you guys see consumers and individuals actually interacting with self-sovereign identity technologies? Like, do you see them being brought to market by governments and agencies? Do you see technology companies who are going to specialize in creating an individual's own private data center? How is this actually going to happen?
I think it's going to look a lot. I think it's going to look a lot like it does today. Sorry, go ahead.
You can go first. Okay. I think the benefits the technology like blockchain or self-sovereign identity bring to the individuals actually is quite obvious, because people can just keep their identity and their personal data, and that can defend the data keeper of the internet company. Actually, in an ideally world invented by the blockchain fans, the personal data is like oil or Bitcoin. There will be exchange in the future. So for now, we just use the SSI to go one step further for now. So
yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of UX improvements that make it seem like the applications that you're interacting with are just the applications of today, right? Like you interact with applications today. I think a lot of frameworks will be created in the open source space for building these applications, and making them feel like the user experience hasn't changed a whole lot. We're in reality, like the UX will change, but it will still be easy to use because of these tools, and it'll feel a lot like the UX that we've come to be familiar with today, whether that be on mobile or on the web. Again, a little bit abstract, but that's to me how practical use will happen.
So so Qian, go ahead.
I just don't know anyone here to buy the cryptocurrency already. Actually, if you buy the cryptocurrency 4 or 5 years ago, it's quite hard to do. But now there are a lot of exchange agents to help you to do it very friendly. So I think this is a same process for the new technology like self-sovereign or the blockchain related data privacy protections technology. They just need time to evolve. Yeah.
So Qian, maybe you can talk a little bit about what your company Thoughtworks is doing specifically with regard to self-sovereign identity technologies.
Actually, we think the solution for SSI is really important in some area. Just like I mentioned, the case I mentioned before in the healthcare industry, right? So our team have developed a solution around the SSI, including our cross platforms, pluggable mobile wallet. This is one, and also we developed a reference implementation of W3C standards of SSI and VC. This is a verifiable credential. It's very related to SSI. And also we also provide the SDK for integration purpose. So the whole solution can enable us to integrate with your system. I mean the identity system or your some existing system, identity system, and also can adapt to different under layers blockchain quickly. So this is what we have done. Yeah.
So you're working directly with enterprises to implement SSI technologies into applications.
Yes, you're right. We actually, beside that, we also need to find the suitable scenario for them and to use the SSI. That's the hardest part, actually.
Mm-hmm. Kyle, tell us about what Provide is doing.
Yeah. So in a similar way, and I mentioned the standards. We've been working on what's called the baseline protocol, and that is just an inter-organizational data sharing protocol that enables traditional systems, like organizations, to keep their data in traditional systems of record and use it, like allow end users to use that data, like whether that be an SAP or otherwise other systems of record, and have that data synchronized across their counterparties throughout a business process. And so we've been working with the Oasis. It's an Oasis open project, and we the Provide stack is, we just open source that, and it's the reference implementation for the baseline protocol and the basis for which that standard is now pending ratification as an Oasis standard. So that's pretty exciting. It would essentially graduate when ratified and graduate to IEEE or ISO like an ISO like level, and hopefully that happens sometime next year. And yeah, it's all about creating standards. And standards for UX, and then sort of connecting all of those dots together. I think next year is the year for SSI and zero knowledge proofs at scale.
So shifting gears to talk a little bit about government. We've seen various governments around the world implement data protection laws, the European Union with GDPR, more recently China with some of the information protection laws that have been announced in the last few weeks. Just to mention only two, how do you think this will impact the ownership of data, both in a particular jurisdiction, but also cross jurisdiction? How should companies respond? And do you see self-sovereign identity playing a role in this new data protection regimes?
I think this question is I just want to say, the GDPR or China Information Protection Law, this is the requirements most of companies in that in their region must be obeyed, right? So I noticed so many companies are aware that their traditional security policy, like just setting a firewall, it's not gonna work in modern, the internet, the public internet environment. They just, I know a lot of CIO or CSO, the security officer, the chief security officer, are adopting one security policy named the Zero Trust policy. This policy, the security policy, is following the principle: never trust, always verify. That means they will not gonna set the firewall. They just open their network, but they do the verification on every exercise from the outside. Okay. I think the deeper reason for them to change their security policy, in my opinion, they have all known that data are the core asset of their company. But unfortunately, they still not realize the data is belonging to their user. They don't know that. So they still use a lot of security policy to have them to protect their so-called data. So what if the user take the rights of the data ownership? I think if in that way, enterprise can be released from their heavy workload to protect user data, and they don't need to worry about the data breaches of the PII, the PII kind of personal data. This is a different mindset for them, but it's hard for now. It's a little hard to let them change their mindset. But actually, I think this kind of laws, the GDPR or the China Information Protection Law, already give them a warning. They must take care of their users' personal data, right? So maybe the SSI can release some workload or pressure from the enterprise.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think it sort of echoes like the shift in the security model to the user, and so I think another potential use case for, well, it's more for baselining than self-sovereign identity, but like SOC compliance. How do you address SOC compliance in this this new world that we live in, where everyone's remote? And that's sort of more of like more of an internal concern, I think, for organizations than one of like user privacy or data privacy for their users and customers. And I know we're talking more around the customer, that relationship right now. Yeah, it's interesting because you have just a new paradigm in all the ways. The users are will own their own data and sort of be they'll be responsible for their own destinies online should they choose to accept this these new models, which they will, I think. But yeah, it will usher in a new set of problems that we if we are proactive and really thinking about, I think will really lead to a better online experience for everyone, for sure.
Well, I think Chan's right, and it really kind of flips the problem around, right? Where rather than constraining or putting the responsibility on enterprises to protect people's data and be compliant, it really puts the responsibility back to the individual and the consumer, and gives them back control of their data, which in a way is a simple solution to the problem. Do you see, or do you predict that governments are going to embrace SSI as a way to protect consumer data?
Eventually, I think. Maybe not in the near term. That's my thought.
Actually, in China, we already have a ID system for our national people. It's called EID. It's developed by our government, a parliament of our government. They just use the concept of SSI. They can assign the Unicode identity to each of our people, and then they can combine a lot of identity. For example, if you want to go to the hospital, or you want to go to another, maybe the school, you can just use the one identity. I mean, you can use a different identity, but combined with just one master identity in SSI. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think in the U.S., we're still a little ways off from that. And yeah, I think eventually it'll finally get adopted here. I think it's just going to be a little while.
And why do you think it will take a while, Kyle? Is it just slow adoption?
It's just the bureaucracy and the politics of it, frankly. But yeah, I think that it's getting both sides of the aisle to see the value of it, and I do think that they're trying to go down the path of sane regulation, and that's what we're going to need. I think we're going to need like very well understood regulation of blockchain in general before we can actually do that. But yeah, once that happens, which they're trying, and I do think that it'll get there. It'll just take a while.
Just want to add one more. Last time we just talked about the CBDC, right? CBDC. Actually, I heard some news from the EU. They are developing a CBDC for themselves, and also they will provide the digital wallet to hold that not cryptocurrency, digital currency, and also they will actually combine their identity, the digital identity in it. That means this kind of wallet can hold the CBDC, the currency, digital currency, but also can to hold the personal identity and personal data involved. This is the kind of service they will provide. Yeah.
Absolutely, it makes total sense, and yeah, it's interesting. Like, is Thoughtworks developing similar solutions in that regard?
We are just try to develop the business opportunity, but we have for now we don't have the opportunity to participate the related project.
Yeah, Qian, I think it'd be really interesting for us to to collaborate from what you guys have built and just to see your thoughts on the baseline protocol at some point. I think there's an interesting opportunity there for us to explore.
Great. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining the webinar this evening. This evening here in Asia, this morning there in the United States, and thank you both. Very interesting technology. I think it would be fun to come back in 6 to 12 months and see whether Kyle's prediction is correct, that 2022 is the year of SSI and zero knowledge
At scale.
So good at scale, right? That even my mother can understand, right? So that'd be great. All right, guys, thanks a lot for your time. Really appreciate having you on the show, and look forward to seeing you here again soon.